Welcome to Rauta's non-metal reviews. This time we go to the world of metal without being metal. I know it sounds confusing, but I'll explain and then you will finally understand. But those who already spotted the name and already know what I'm talking about, well, let's see what we have here. So, this is coming from Cold Spring Records, and I'm still trying to figure out which way I'm gonna show you. Well, the trick is here. Here it is, Shane Embury, On Your Darkness. Then you twist it like this and it's Iggor Cavalera, Neon Gods. This is why I was confused, like which way I'm going to show it, because the text is going to be upside down. So here it is, Iggor Cavalera, Shane Embury, and digipack release, no booklet, just a very, very simplistic, but in a way also a little bit confusing packaging. Black and white, Cold Spring Records, 33 minutes, 2 songs, and what can you expect? Well, kind of a droney, kind of an ambient-like borderline, kind of a borderline noisy power electronics, kind of a SQ thing. I was trying to figure out which way I'm gonna put this, but I realized it doesn't really just fit in one box. Certain parts are kind of ambient-like, certain parts are definitely more droney, but they are borderline, not like harsh noise, but noisier things. So I'm like, okay, let's go with the drone. That's roughly where you go, because a lot of these buzzing sounds, a lot of these droney sounds are in fact what it's supposed to be. If you would call it in an umbrella term, like it's some kind of a underground industrial niche and all, well, technically speaking, you might be quite correct. But this comes with a twist. It depends from which part of the underground you are, how dedicated you are into this underground niche, generic, not generic, but marginal kind of music. And I am somewhat deep into this soul scene, but then there are lots of marginal, really underground, really niche genres which I don't know the difference. I mean, if some people were going to ask me, hey, what's the main difference between noise and harsh noise and all that stuff, like, okay, I'm not gonna touch it. Same goes with certain parts of like power electronics and this and that, and I'm like, I really don't where these vague lines, borders end and where the difference start. But about the names. Now, obviously, Iggor Cavalera is known for his work in Sepultura. Sure, there are other bands, but that is the main thing. I mean, Iggor Cavalera is to Sepultura what, Lars Ulrich is to Metallica. The drummer, the guy who creates percussions and drums and cymbals and whatnot. And Shane Embury, man of multiple talents and bands and all. Most people know him for his work in Napalm, but also bands like Brujeria, etc., etc. So a man of, handling the strings and the kind of a bushy hair, very nice personality. I got to meet him some 15 years ago at a festival and all, or maybe more like 20 years now, but goes beside the point. Napalm Death, Brujeria, etc. guy coming from the undergrounds of England and beyond. Very international musician at this point, I guess. So these two underground legends are here with I would call split release, because it's not so much like a typical collaboration where you get this no name, household name number 1 and household number 2, and like, hey, we're gonna do some music together. Okay, it's more like both of these guys have their own respective tracks. Both remind or resemble kind of one another. There are similarities, but also differences. And after so many spins, I'm still kind of in this retarded mode, and I cannot say which one I like more. Maybe the opening track is this much better, but this is hard to say because these are both instrumental tracks, and these are both lasting more than 15 minutes on average, which means throughout the 33 minutes, first it felt like it's longer than what it is, and after a couple of spins later, I am kind of like, yeah, it's actually shorter. Could have easily been something like 45, 50 minutes and wouldn't be boring, but maybe this is the safer way to put it out. It's not gonna drag you like long to the grave and beyond, because it ends before you're dead and all. So I'm saying this is a fascinating release, but it's a very niche, very marginal one for those who understand these given genres. You don't have to be, expert on these given genres or understanding ambient, drone, power electronics, noise, and beyond to the scope that, hey, you can write a book about it. What you need to know is that once you have some kind of understanding of this kind of instrumental music, which is not done with, your typical instruments. We're not talking about guitars, violins, and so forth, or bass, keyboards, at least the usual way. But this is more like these guys experimenting with some kind of non-music. I like it. Sometimes I call it non-music because a lot of those ambient parts, ambient albums, for example, they really resonate with me because they are so non-musical. There are no melodies. They're not, spoken or, singing parts at all. There are no riffs. There are no rhythms as such. So people are like, how can you call it even music? Which just ambience. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. It's basically the same thing when you go out. Sometimes you hear sounds, not necessarily noises, but it can be that too. I'm talking about the winds, the sounds from a construction yard, sounds when you have pipes making weird noise. I've been in buildings where pipes were actually making music, and once again we're talking this kind of music, so non-music. And this is what I love with this album as well. It's maybe not exactly the catchy, and it's definitely not as haunting as my favorite dark ambient albums, but it resonates the right way. There is something mystical happening here, and I guess it comes with the understanding of, going beyond music, going through the barrier, which is kind of invisible, but it's right there. And the funny thing is, another ex-Napalm, that guy who creates this art known as Lull, very early on being in the band, that he makes some of the best dark ambient right there is. So these guys coming from the punk, the grind, the death metal underground actually understand this kind of stuff because it's even more marginal than whatever this kind of a punk and death metal and grind ever were. Well, not ever, but you get the idea. So this is not for everybody. That's kind of a given. And I wouldn't even say that if you're a big fan of Iggor Cavalera or Shane Embury that you need to have this album. But I think it should spark your imagination. It should spark your understanding and curiosity. I want to know beyond the music what these guys are doing. And this is the release. Links provided in the description box. Go give it a chance, and who knows, maybe you will find something new. And those who are more familiar with the given style and genres, well, you are in for a treat, of some level at least. Now, off you go and enjoy.